suddenly when we realized that calling the movie Cockfighter was a very bad decision, then suddenly we had to change the title. So we went through all sorts of titles, and of course my favorite, but this was purely as a joke, was Naked Under Feathers, which I think was a great title.
That is a great title.
But it got called various things, and they trotted out various campaigns calling it things like Born to Lose and a few other sort of generic hard-boiled titles like that.
That's to me that is amazing, an amazing time period to have been working with Roger Corman. To me, as a fan and also a film viewer, I always sort of look back on that time period. I don't know if I really actually enjoyed the movies, but there's just something about the nostalgia, and it's sort of there seemed to be a lot of political stuff going on, and it just seemed like a really fun time to actually, to remember watching movies. Maybe it wasn't that interesting watching the movies, but just the memory of it. I don't know if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I think so. We were having a ball, and I didn't realize the whole history of Roger at that point, that when I was there in 1973, he was very new to, he'd had tiny little companies, but this was the first time he'd had a viable company, and he started it in around 70, 71. It was all quite new to him, and every movie was an adventure. He was very much involved. And in terms of movie making, too, there was some interesting stuff going on. That was the blaxploitation era. Of course, that was one thing Roger was really into.
Yeah.
In fact, one story not everyone knows, and I was just astonished to discover, is that, of course, Martin Scorsese was one of the many people who had worked for Roger, and having made Boxcar Bertha for Roger, Scorsese had written and was very eager to film Mean Streets, which of course is reflecting his own upbringing in the seedy Italian parts of New York. All right, so he went to Roger with the script, and Roger said, well, this is a very interesting project, but he said, my brother Gene has had some success recently with some blaxploitation films. So, this is Scorsese's quote of Roger, if you are willing to swing a little and make all the characters black, I will fund the movie and give you enough money that you can film it on location in New York.
Oh, that would have been great. I would love to see, black Italians.
And Scorsese said he thought it over and decided, no, that just wasn't going to do it. And so Mean Streets is actually shot in L.A.
Yeah, that is pretty interesting. And I always love the Scorsese quote where, he had finished Boxcar Bertha and showed it to John Cassavetes, and John Cassavetes says, "Hey, great if you want to waste your life, making this kind of stuff, or you can go and make, Mean Streets." I always thought that was an interesting thing where Cassavetes, sort of slamming Roger in a sense of just saying, hey kid, you're wasting your time making this movie. You should be making Mean Streets.
Well, a lot of people were able to see that they needed, after the Roger experience, to go their own way. And one of the most interesting people, I think, and who I was able to talk to for the book was John Sayles. And as you may know, John Sayles was originally an award-winning. He had stories in Esquire and that, and a very good friend of mine, Frances Dole, who's worked for Roger since the beginning of time. She actually was the one who discovered Sayles and brought him aboard to write. He first wrote, I think his first was Piranha, which of course was Roger's response to Jaws.
Right.
You can't afford a great big fish, you can make a movie about a lot of little fish. So Sayles made several movies from Roger, and probably more than almost anyone who worked for him was just soaking up information. He knew nothing about the film industry, but he was learning like crazy, and then with the $40,000 he had accumulated from his work on Roger's pictures, he went off and made The Return of the Secaucus 7.
Right.
A movie that Roger was willing to invest in, and Sayles said, no, I think I have to do it myself.
Oh, well, that's interesting. I wonder what Roger would have changed in that movie.
I don't know, but...
they would have all been black.
Sayles was very grateful, and Roger didn't... He said this without really having read the script, but I think Sayles just instinctively felt that he didn't want to hand over any form of control or obligation. And I think certainly he could not have had the career that he's had without that kind of willingness and determination to go his own way.
Right. You know, actually, the first time I remember hearing about John Sayles was a short story I read, and this is actually, I believe this is before Piranha, and it may have been in Esquire, it could have been in Playboy, I don't remember, but I just remember reading the story about the life history of a movie theater, and it goes from, you know, playing the old movies, and then it sort of went to this exploitation period, and then it goes into sort of an art house period. I mean, it was actually the movie theater was the character.
That's
and
fascinating.
Yeah, and then it ends up where I think it's either a video store or it's a flea market, and it's really a sad story, but it sort of, in a way, makes me think of, you know, sort of the Roger Corman experience of where he's actually, you know, he's making these movies, and then he becomes sort of the distributor, and then lets other people direct them, and then he just sort of loses a little bit of what he was originally after.
Yeah. Well, there are many people who revere Roger, and there are a lot of reasons to revere him, but his days of being a movie maker are long gone, and I over the years that I worked for him, because I worked for him, back up a little, in that period, 73 to 75, and then went away to fulfill my dreams and be an academic and all those things, and for very complicated reasons came back in 1986. And that second period that I worked from him, from 86 to 94, there were times you could see the excitement and the energy and the talent, and there were times you couldn't. There were times he was not really interested.
Wow.
And that's sad. It's not so sad if he found something else that interested him more, but he just reached a point in his life where he wasn't quite sure what he was interested in, but it was as if, well, in the book I kind of treat the company as his Frankenstein monster, and I think it's fairly apt. It is something that he created and that has kind of overwhelmed him in some ways.
You know, one of the things I really enjoy in your book, I guess the thing is, you know I am, and I imagine a lot of people are, more fascinated with him as an entity more so than his films.
Well, I'm glad to hear that, because some of the reviews I got from some of these funky little publications seemed personally insulted that I hadn't analyzed each and every one of his films. And that was not my goal.